Hey everybody, it's the Lawn Gnome, and I want to welcome you all once again to this very special occasion here on my channel, the second installment of the final Gnome Doc here on my channel, or in case you have just showed up and haven't watched the previous episode, this is actually part 6 of 8, as I felt that it would only be appropriate to continue a Gnome Doc that was done in my earlier stages here on my channel, because I got so much amazing feedback and so many comments demanding that this story be continued. So here we are, continuing on with the story of the DC animated universe, and I have to say, if there's one thing that I love about doing Gnome Docs on my channel, it's the fact that I gain so much knowledge about things that I thought that I knew everything about, and it turns out there's a little something new that I discover along the way. And one of the few things that really surprised me in the couple of years that we're going to be discussing on the DC Animated Universe journey is the fact that it was so active. It was such a time for DC's animation department because they were just cranking out so many different things for so many different demographics in the world of animation. Not only were they about to embark on this amazing journey with their DC Universe original film storyline that would last 15 films in total, but there were so many things being done for the kids, like Lego superhero movies and DC Superhero Girls, as well as the first steps to the DC Cinematic Universe to finally give DC the opportunity to compete with the ever-popular, at the time, Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, I gotta tell you guys, I learned so much because of this specific installment, and I'm really hoping that you guys will all learn a little something too. And once again, I just want to thank you all, because if you have been watching my Gnome Docs up until this point, just thank you so much for all your support. I really wanted to make sure that this final Gnome Doc just did it where it counted. So let's continue on with the journey. I will see you in the next one. The DC world of animation had officially stepped into new territory with their own take on what the Marvel Cinematic Universe had been doing on the big screen. At the time, DC entirely was a bit of a mixed bag. The New 52 universe in comics was not really being embraced by the comic-reading faithful, and was not much of a competition for Marvel. Not to mention the fact that DC would see one of its worst box office outings with the live-action adaptation of Green Lantern starring Ryan Reynolds. To this day, fans of Reynolds know that he has never let DC forget their mistake. DC's parent company Warner Brothers had been providing a lot of insight into the future of their DC characters, mentioning names like Christopher Nolan and Zack Snyder as often as they could. Riding on the coattails of the Dark Knight trilogy was Zack Snyder's take on Superman, Man of Steel. While the film was not viewed as a favorite by everyone, Snyder's take on Superman definitely had a huge comic book feel, and there were only whispers about him being chosen to begin developing a brand new DC cinematic universe to rival Marvel. Meanwhile, the animated library of DC films was in a good place to see if a continuous story in that universe would be successful. The characters were well established, and the library was already a huge success, so it was time to get creative. Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox would be the official start of a continuous story, and the first film to follow would be Justice League War. This film would be based on the very first 6 issues of the New 52 Justice League comics. This film would see the famous superheroes unite to fight the omnipotent threat of Darkseid, though it was not going to be an easy task for the heroes to get along. The film would include voice talents of Alan Tudyk, Sean Astin, and Michelle Monaghan. The fans would also be introduced to Jason O'Mara, who would be the newest voice given to the Dark Knight. As Batman fans know, this is always something that can make or break a DC animated film. Like Flashpoint Paradox, Justice League War was an action-packed thrill ride, but a lot lighter in tone, as the heroes would have comedic banter with themselves as frenemies, but they would eventually become friends. It would also feature the origin story of Cyborg. Of course, known to be a member of the Teen Titans in comics and television, the world of the New 52 saw this young and up-and-coming hero as a deeper and brooding young adult who would serve fans as more of an outsider looking in at more established heroes. Justice League War received mixed responses. Some called it a great modern origin story that will win you over with its action and humor, and others would say that the film did not reach high standards like the other DC animated films and have been criticized for pretty much being monotonous. Fans didn't seem to mind, as the film still did sell over 5 million copies, and once again would be excited for the next film, as the new post-credits scene would be featured, as well as giving the fans no runaround as to who the next antagonist was going to be. On the very same week of the release of Justice League War, another Justice League animated film would be released on home video as a Target retail exclusive. It would not be part of the continuity of the DC original library. Justice League Adventures Trapped in Time would pay tribute to a simpler time in DC animation, along with a comeback of a classic DC favorite, the Legion of Doom. The Legion of Doom dated all the way back to DC's Hanna-Barbera days with the 1973 series Challenge of the Super Friends, a classic good versus evil spectacle that only a true Saturday morning cartoon could provide. The Legion of Doom would be reincarnated decades later thanks to the DC animated universe in the final season of Justice League Unlimited, and even appear in one of the DC Universe films, Justice League Doom. The film would see DC animation contributors Diedrich Bader, Kevin Michael Richardson, and Travis Willingham return to reprise their roles like they had done before. The movie was stereotypically lost in the shuffle, as there was practically no praise or even news about this film even being released on home video, even getting a retail-wide home video release in May of that very same year. It would be the next DC Universe film that would hold more interest. It would be a continuation to the New 52 timeline, but it would not be a direct sequel to Justice League War. Much like current films released in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this would be the first story in a solo storyline of Batman. Son of Batman would feature one of the biggest surprises in DC history. Batman would learn from Talia al Ghul that he was in fact a father, and that they had a son named Damian, who was raised by Talia and of course Batman's sworn enemy, Ra's al Ghul. With the League of Assassins being taken over by Deathstroke, Talia takes Damian and hides him with Batman, giving Batman the opportunity to train Damian to become the newest incarnation of Robin. Jason O'Mara would return to voice Batman, and DC voice guru Andrea Romano would find the voice of Damian in 11-year-old newcomer Stuart Allen. The film would also star Firefly co-stars Morena Baccarin as Talia and Sean Mayer as Nightwing, who would only have a cameo in the film. The film received generally positive reviews and was called an improvement, as the mature nature of the film found a great balance with the lighthearted moments and comedy. Others said that the film captured the noir atmosphere that makes Batman the icon that he is. The film would gross even more than its 2 preceding films, and while this film would not feature a post-credit scene, Batman fans knew that Batman and Son would make their return very soon. As 2014 would reach an end, the 20th DC original movie would be a real treat for the Batman fans, as DC Animation would make a film based on the popular Batman Arkham video games. Batman Assault on Arkham would only see Batman serve his purpose in the title of the film, while the main attraction would be everyone's favorite bunch of freelance villains, Amanda Waller's Suicide Squad. Favorites Deadshot, Harley Quinn, Killer Frost, and Captain Boomerang would team up with the likes of King Shark, Black Spider, and KG Beast. The voice cast would be headlined by Kevin Conroy, Neil McDonough, and even CCH Pounder would return to voice Amanda Waller for the first time since Batman Superman Public Enemies. The real treat of this film would not just be a villain smorgasbord. The fans would be treated to the voice talents of Hayden Wallach and Troy Baker as Harley Quinn and the Joker. Almost identical to the voices of Mark Hamill and Arlene Sorkin, one would almost never guess the difference. The movie was met somewhere in the middle amongst fans. There was no doubt that the film was fun, as many praised Assault on Arkham for its action, art style, humor, and characters, while others would criticize it for having no real plot to speak of and just relying on the violence. What many didn't really think about was the fact that the film did push the bar, providing dark comedy and sexual content. It was a bold move by DC, and this experiment would definitely be looked back on in the near future as reference for new animated films from DC. In 2015, fans would return to the DC Universe storyline with Justice League Throne of Atlantis, as the Justice League would face off against the Kingdom of Atlantis, and the true king would discover his rightful place and become the king, as well as the new member of the Justice League, Aquaman. Voice cast of Justice League War would go through a few minor changes, as the voices of Superman and Wonder Woman would be replaced with Jerry O'Connell and Rosario Dawson, both who had lent their voices to DC Animation many times before. Nathan Fillion would also return once again to voice everyone's favorite Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. Aquaman would be voiced by newcomer Matt Latner, and Sam Witwer would be the main villain in the Aquaman film, his half-brother Orm, also known as the DC supervillain Ocean Master. Reviews for Throne of Atlantis were not the best. It was very disappointing for many. While people were very happy to see a film that was not focused on Batman or Superman, many felt that Throne of Atlantis missed the mark, as many felt that Aquaman was the least interesting character even in his own movie. While the film did have a very strong first act, it faltered on its second half, leaving it only somewhat of an enjoyable film.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part.
After the release of Justice League Throne of Atlantis, 2015 would be a massive year for DC Animation all across the board. Warner Brothers would crank out DC direct-to-video animations of all kinds. With the success of the Lego Movie in theaters in February 2014, more would soon follow. The first would be a Cartoon Network premiere, Lego DC Comics Superheroes Batman Beleaguered. The film would be followed up with the third DC Lego film in February 2015, Justice League vs. Bizarro League, which would be a direct-to-DVD home video release. Neither would be huge moneymakers, but they would find their respective audiences among children. The next DC Universe film would arrive 2 months later, and it would be the sequel to Son of Batman, Batman vs. Robin. The film would be loosely based on one of the more popular New 52 Batman stories written by Scott Snyder, Night of the Owls. The villainous organization known as the Court of Owls was generations of families of Gotham City's elite, with the city at their fingertips, along with a few strange methods of creating an undead army known as Talons. Of course, Batman's family would be the only wealthy family in Gotham that would resist joining the court, resulting in the Court of Owls' want to take Batman out. In Batman vs. Robin, it would be through the manipulation of Damian to weaken Batman, and under the tutelage of the lead Talon, Batman would be defeated. Unlike Throne of Atlantis, Batman vs. Robin would receive positive reviews across the board, being one of the more popular films to date. DC Animation then would move on to releasing its first web series, Batman Unlimited, on the official DC Kids YouTube channel. The web series would feature Batman and fellow DC heroes in an extreme style through an old marketing method developed in the 1980s used to sell toys. That was what the web series was based on. That very same year, we would see the direct-to-DVD film in Batman Unlimited Animal Instincts, and it would be followed up almost instantaneously with a sequel, Batman Unlimited Monster Mayhem. If the kids were not suffering from DC overload yet, the fourth DC Lego Heroes film, Justice League Attack the Legion of Doom, would come out that very same year. At the very same time, DC was on everyone's mind as a brand new DC live-action film universe based on Zack Snyder's Man of Steel was officially a reality. 2016 was going to start off with Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, which would not only see Ben Affleck don the cape and cowl, but Wonder Woman would be gracing the big screen for the very first time in movie history. Other films in the now DC Extended Universe would include Suicide Squad and a Wonder Woman solo film, as well as a take on Marvel's Avengers, Justice League. The Justice League would arrive a little bit sooner in the world of DC animation, but it would be a very different kind of Justice League. The excitement was still there for it because it would be featuring a familiar face in the driver's seat. In the world of DC Universe films, each year gives the fans 3 new films, and with 2 releases already in the books in 2015, the final release would see Bruce Timm come back to his roots. With a new script co-written by himself and his colleague Alan Burnett, DC Animation would release the DC animated film based on DC Comics' Elseworlds, which features titles based on DC comic characters in alternative universes of all kinds. Justice League Gods and Monsters, while it would feature Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, it would only be their names that would be familiar. Superman would be the son of General Zod, who had escaped Krypton's destruction raised by Mexican refugees. Batman would be an actual vampire, and Wonder Woman would be the child of the New Gods. However, while this film would be very unfamiliar, with Bruce Timm on board and even animating the film in the Bruce Timm classic animation style, the fans were ready for this next adventure. Many would look at this film as being a failure due to its low grossing numbers, but the film received tremendous critical acclaim, calling it a true must-watch for DC fans, providing a rich atmospheric story with tremendous character development. It is now one of the best DC animated films you probably didn't watch. The new year was about to arrive, and a new chapter in DC's history was about to begin, as the DCEU was going to kick off in March of 2016. The world of DC animation would see the end of an era as the legendary voice director Andrea Romano would sail off into the sunset at the top of her game and make way for Wes Gleason, who already had his practice before the big game. Gleason was responsible for Batman Unlimited films, as well as 3 prequel digital animated shorts for Justice League Gods and Monsters. The question would be, moving forward, would the DC animated universe see a bright future in the years to come?